I want to do a little bit of a discussion about consciousness. It's kind of more of a from a cognitive science or kind of maybe a psychological perspective. But there's this. I want to sort of define qualia or quail, which is very important to anybody who wants to understand consciousness. Qualia is the plural form of quail, Quale, not Quail, the bird, but qualia is qualia are units of perceptual experience which are not really related to this pen having a certain property. It has to do with my personal consciousness. It has to do with my consciousness, doing a certain sort of thing. And the sort of a certain quail will cause me to perceive a sort of quail that is in here will cause me to look at this a certain way, and will make sort of it's just sort of I guess quality can be referred to as a quality of perception or quality of the senses, because I can look at this and it's quite possible that the quail that the certain quail or qualia that are going on here will cause me to perceive this differently, independent of this pen having a certain property. It mostly has to do with this. The pen does have properties, and I do experience some of those properties, but I might experience the pen differently because of qualia. And I guess this is a good thing to think about, is because we have certain things called thought experiments, which are things like imagine yourself to be a bat, or the philosopher's zombie, but the thing I want to really go into right now is Mary the color scientist thought experiment. Mary the color scientist is a thought experiment used to discuss qualia. Mary the color scientist. This is a person who is a neuroscientist. She is a neuroscientist, a cognitive scientist, knows everything there is to know about what happens when I see color, about what happens when anyone sees any kind of color. She knows everything about what happens when I see green. She knows everything about what does happen. She's read every book about it. She knows everything about what happens in human perception of color, of any kind of color. She knows everything about it. Everything that can be read in books. Anything that can be taught in a class about what happens when a human sees color. She knows it. She's the biggest expert in the world on what happens when a person sees color. She's the biggest expert ever on what happens when color is apprehended, or when I think I see color, or whatever way you want to philosophically twist that around. She knows it all about color science, between the possible things and us. There's one problem with her, though. She is colorblind, and colorblind just means she sees whites and grays and blacks, some blacks, mostly just like black and white and gray, all that stuff. That the most neutral color that you can get, just like being watching a 1930s Western or something like that, or something like that. She is colorblind, what this means is that she doesn't know what it's like to perceive color. She knows everything about what happens when one perceives color. She's the biggest expert on it in the world. But she has never perceived color herself, and thus does not know what would happen if she did see red or green. She knows everything about it that there is to learn in classes and in books and in all that stuff, but she has never experienced red or experienced green herself. And I guess the whole thought experiment here is, what do you think will happen? And well, I guess what the whole thought experiment is, let's say we come up with a cure for color blindness, which will make her see color just like you and I do. Everybody else does. She'll see all kinds of color that we all see. If she looks at this pen, she'll see green. This certain green trope. I love the word trope. Sorry. So she gets this surgery, this cure. She gets up from it, takes her bandages off, sees red. What do you think? The whole thought experiment here is, what do you think is going to happen? Is she going to be one? There's two possible things that might happen. Is she going to be, oh yeah, that is definitely how I knew that would happen? When she finally wakes up and sees this green, will she be like, number one, will she be like, oh yeah, I knew that would be how that happens? Will she just be like, oh yeah, that's definitely how we perceive color? I'm not surprised at all. This first view is the view that Daniel Dennett holds. He says that there are no qualia at all, and that, consciousness is, consciousness, and that, there are no qualia, and that she experiences color just like everyone else. Because of qualia, I might experience this green different than you. I might, experience different things, different colors and whatever, different than you. And Dennett says that there are no qualia, and that if this were an actual thing going on, that she would not be surprised at what she saw. The second thing, the second possibility, is where she would be very surprised and would be flabbergasted about what it's really like to experience green or red, and she would be very surprised and would have to do a bunch more research about it and do a bunch more stuff on it, because she would be very surprised. This is the instance where there would be qualia, where the way she perceives something is different than the consensus might be, which is how you get things like all those books and classes, which is how those are all yielded. My thoughts on the subject is that yes, there are qualia. There are qualia, because I really think that we perceive things differently. I perceive certain objects very differently than you would. Now, I guess that I really don't see any way out of having qualia, and I mean, it might be. I really think that consciousness is something that is distorted. I guess I don't want to say that word anymore, because it's just the existence of qualia. It's just that there's consciousness from person to person is different, and that's just because of qualia, and that is why people perceive things differently from subject to subject. There's a different issue that if qualia do exist, then that could possibly bring down a certain theory, but I'm going to discuss that in the next video.